Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast. They can be found each week a whole bunch of different places. We now have a podcast, but your best bet is to check the website blainesworld.net. That's one word, blainesworld.net. And you'll find access to YouTube. You'll find access to your favorite podcast location. And hope you can catch this show featuring not only me, I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce two guests, and they are, first of all, Doug Savitt and Evan Eckstrom, and it's Eric Eckstrom.
Eckstrom, you got
Eckstrom, got it finally.
it. Yeah.
And
Evan Eckstrom.
Okay, and Doug already knows the routine, but you can also wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this, Evan. So if they're watching, that's Evan. And I should mention that I know Doug in terms of being an actor and director who grew up in Western North Carolina. He holds a BA in theater from UNC Charlotte and spent some time in Chicago before moving back to the area. He last directed a very interesting play I saw, Nocturne, at Hayward Arts Regional Theater earlier this year. And I have to say, Evan, I apologize, I don't have your background, so I'll let you give kind of the Reader's Digest version, if you can keep it under, 5 minutes?
Yeah, we can work with that. Yeah.
Okay, but just share a little bit of your background, if you would.
Yeah. A little somewhere between 10, 15 years ago, I went to undergrad for theater with an emphasis in performance at University of New Hampshire, Durham, New Hampshire. Beyond that, I moved to the city of Boston, where I lived for about 9 years, running a grassroots, very, very small theater company called Strange News Theater. Who my artistic director for that, it was just me and him running it, is now in a graduate playwriting program at Hunter College that he just started. So that's really exciting for him. I hope to get to work with him again after he gets big and famous.
And his name is what? Can you share it?
Yeah, Davis Alianello.
Okay, great.
So he's got some stuff published. If you look his name, he's got a lot of vowels in his last name. I got the consonants covered. It was a good team.
And so what got you to the Asheville area?
I've been coming here since 2010 for various friends that lived here, as well as just getting out into the woods and hiking and camping. And there's just a lot more unlimited access to that sort of activity. New England's got some beautiful forests, but it's all pretty tightly regulated and gets crowded because everyone from the city goes up there at the same time. So down here is a little bit more wide open for me.
And so now you're here permanently?
Yep. Been here for a little over 3 years.
Okay, great. And you mentioned off the air you've done some work for Magnetic Theater. Is this now the first? You've been in a play with them as well? Well, you're in a current play, right?
Yeah, currently we have Beautiful Cages running, so we just opened that this past weekend. There's 2 more weekends to catch that. It's written by Jamie Knox, directed by Mandy Bean, and it's we're all pretty proud of how it came out. So if anybody that's listening wants to get a chance before the end of September to catch that, it's going really well.
Okay, I'm actually Jamie I know very well, and an amazing playwright. She writes all these plays, and she's an actor too. She's in a play I just saw her in. Trying to think what.
Blood at the Root, right?
What?
Was it Blood at the Root?
Yeah. Did you get to see that?
I didn't get a chance.
Okay, Shane, Doug, did you see that?
I didn't have a chance to see it. I wanted to, but I couldn't get over there.
But she's amazing. So she acts and she directs. She's a mother. She keeps herself a little bit busy. And that ties into Doug in terms of your background. I interviewed you, I guess, maybe a couple of years ago. But Doug, same thing too. Your background in terms of theater, you started out acting, I guess, way back when?
Yeah, back.
Yeah. Do you remember your first play?
Yeah, it's Fiddler on the Roof. When I was a junior in high school.
Okay. And what was your role?
I was Mendel, who's the rabbi's son, and I also did the bottle dance with a couple other people.
Okay. Is that why you had the beard too, or it was appropriate at the time?
I mean, I did have the beard then. I think I was the only cast member in my high school who could grow a beard. I think everyone else had spirit gum and fake beards, but
Okay. And now you have a real beard too, is that correct?
Yeah, that's a real beard.
Okay. Now, before then, so you had never acted before then?
No, I maybe in like elementary school in something that, like a class play, but I don't, if I did, I blocked that out of my memory. I was a music guy. I was a band kid. I was in the band. So yeah.
No, I ask for a reason, and I'll ask Evan the same question. Did you ever act? What was your first acting role? Do you remember?
For me,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it was I Won't Grow Up. And it was part of a little musical review in third grade, and I was cast as Peter Pan, the lead in that small number, and I vehemently refused to get under the limelight. So I just was a lost boy in that. But yeah, since then it's been trying to get the lead back, trying to make
Well,
up for it.
I asked the reason, and I think I've shared this with Doug, Evan, but I have a great fundraiser for a theater. I don't care if it's Magnetic or Heart, but I think we should do a fundraiser where everybody does their first role. So when you did in third grade, I assume there's not a videotape of that somewhere?
It might be on VHS in
Oh,
the archives for my parents. Yeah, there
okay.
might be.
But wouldn't that be cool to just recreate it, so everybody would see their first role and they could, if they didn't have videotape of it to show or a fiddler, I don't know if you have a copy of Fiddler, Doug,
Somewhere,
somewhere.
yeah, somewhere.
But we should recreate that at some point in time. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit. So, Evan, you were telling me you've been acting, I guess, off and on in the Asheville area. You've been in a couple of things recently. What were some of the things you were in?
Yeah, so on stage official down here has only been Before Cages, the sketch comedy show that Jason Phillips directed at Magnetic called Algorithm and Blues, a dating sketch show. And so that was my only chance to get in a true production. But I've done before getting here a whole lot of like DIY type of rent out a dance studio and put something on sort of thing. So,
Do you prefer, in terms of acting, do you prefer a type of role like drama, comedy, or
yeah, I mean, I love a dramatic role. I love something that's got layers and a full arc to it. Experience wise, as an adult, there has been a lot of sketch and improv comedy performance, and I taught improv to elementary age students after school for 5 years in Boston. And so a lot of what I've been able to do has been more so short form comedy, but given my preference, I love a full dramatic role. Yeah.
same thing to Doug? You prefer, we'll talk in both contexts, but as an actor, what do you prefer?
Um, I mean, I started musicals, so it's kind of, I mean, they can be, I guess, comedies or dramas, but I mean, that's kind of a genre in itself. So I mean, I got in because I was a band kid. I started doing musicals was with Fiddler, and I did Assassins in college and Urinetown. Um, but I don't know, it just depends. I'm really bad at improv. I took some improv classes in Chicago. I enjoyed them, but I'm not good at it. So I prefer stuff as long as I have a script and it's something I feel like I can work with. That's what I prefer. I mean, my go-to is Shakespeare for the most part in terms of like what I really, really like to do, which I haven't done in a while, just because uh, the script that you have from Shakespeare just gives you everything you need. If you learn how to read it, it gives you everything you need. So that's what I like.
And to put you on the spot in terms of what you like, so you've done acting, but now you've turned to directing,
Mhm.
recently. Acting or directing, you have a preference?
Um, I mean, I enjoy them for different reasons. I mean, the acting is, more of a personal thing in some sense. But as an actor, usually in most plays, depending on what it is, but most plays, you're part of the story, and as a director, you're the one having to make sure the story is told, so you have a more overarching idea of how things work. So I don't know, it just kind of depends. I mean, there's certain shows where I'd be like, yeah, I really want to be a part, and there's other shows where I'm like, I don't know if I fit a part, but I'd love to direct it. It's not, or it's like a Nocturne that we talked about. Like I at one point in my life, it was like I'd want to do it, and then I got to a point like I don't really want to do it, but I want to direct it. So,
What got you into directing?
uh, kind of just seeing more shows and starting to I was kind of analyzing them more as a director from a audience point of view instead of identifying with the characters and necessarily like you know uh, one individual aspect of the acting. I was thinking of it more as an overall story, so I wanted to sort of leap into that a bit. I took a directing class in college, although it's been forever ago. So I sort of approached Hart for their studio season to kind of get wiggle my way in there a couple years ago when we did Gruesome Playground Injuries, and that's how I sort of got started with everything.
What's interesting, two plays you mentioned, very light comedies. I like how the choice of the two plays you chose. You know,
Yeah,
It's
I need to get a an actual comedy at some point because those last two are pretty heavy or can be, and then this one's not Frankenstein Rubrics is not a depressing or play like Nocturne or anything, but it's not it's not a bombastic comedy either, although it does have quite a bit of humorous moments in it.
okay. Now I'll ask Evan the same thing too. So you've been, I know your background mostly in acting. Have you ever done any directing?
Very little. Yeah. Either with peers in my college cohort or directing children in small plays. I would like to give it a go one day, but there's not been a time where I've been able to direct a full production of adults, so to speak. No.
Okay. And let's segue then into the current play we're going to be talking about. It's a play you're going to be doing at, it's going to be at Magnetic, right?
Yes.
And so talk a little bit about it, Doug. First of all, the name of the play and the playwright.
It's called the Frankenstein Rubrics. It's by David Hopes, who I think a lot of people know. He's a local writer. He's written plays before that I believe have done. I think Magnetic's done a couple of his plays in the past.
Yeah.
He's got published poetry and novels and stuff like that. So really intelligent writer. But yeah, it's a take on the Frankenstein story. It's not it's not a pure translation of the novel or anything. It's its own take, an adaptation of it, and it kind of sort of explores sort of the legacy of what Frankenstein has become with a new victor and a new creature, and using historical figures from the inception of the original material. Like we have Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley, as characters in the play and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, David's stuff is typically amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen some of his stuff, but he brings in a whole bunch of different things into them. Like you said, the historical aspect. Does he, in this one, is there some music also?
There is music.
Yeah.
There's two songs in it. So yep.
Okay, he just brings it in and just puts it all together, but really comes out well. And so, Evan? What's your role in this?
So I'm playing the romantic poet Percy Shelley. Is a character in the show.
Okay, and so is there a happy ending to this story or something people have to see?
Um, say it's not like a happy ending. It's not a sad ending. I think you're gonna have to see it.
Okay, well, I plan to. And so, in terms of the play, so there's some music, there's a lot of other stuff in it. I assume in this one there are no sword fights?
No sword fights. There is let's see. I think Mary Shelley smacks one of the characters with a program. There's we do have a actor who will be minimally clothed through most of the performance or a good portion of it. So there's some other things. No sword fights though.
So talk about the getting ready for the play. First of all, how long have you been in rehearsal? Or you're in rehearsal now for it?
We just started rehearsal. Our first rehearsal was yesterday.
And what a lot of people don't realize, and to Evan's credit, to your credit as well, is that when people are in rehearsal for a play, they're also doing about 73 other things, and it just amazes me. And so even in terms of just started rehearsal, and so you're in rehearsal, Evan, but you're also doing another play at the same time, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beautiful Cages is Thursday through Sunday performances, and then rehearsing the other days of the week.
Now, let me ask you, is that tough to do? Have you ever done 3 at one time?
I haven't done 3 at once probably since I was 19.
Yeah, but
that was all I was doing. There was not a day job in between that. So
I give actors right now. Do you have a day job also?
Yeah.
Okay, my goodness. So you're doing 2 plays. You have a day job. I always give credit. Is that tough to be doing 2 plays kind of at once, rehearsing one and in another?
It's more exciting for me. It's the only challenge is getting ahead of the curve insofar as meal prep and making sure groceries are on hand, because I'm one who if I skip a meal, it's not very pleasant to work with me. So I try to keep that tank full.
How about the aspect of memorizing like 2 different parts simultaneously? Working on one and another.
That I know that can be really tricky for some folks as far as input some information, the rest dumps. personally, I don't have too much of an issue with that. I feel pretty confident about my abilities to keep them straight, and especially Percy Shelley as a romantic poet is a far cry from the role I'm currently playing as a very straight-laced senator's son doctor from the 1960s. So it's a pretty wide chasm between those two characters to fall into.
Because I give you so much credit. I'm not really an actor, but I've been in a couple plays, and if I have anything more than 3 lines, I can't do it. So to do 2 shows at once. Doug, same thing too. Have you ever done 2 shows at once?
I don't think I have ever done 2 shows at once, actually.
Okay, but
I don't, yeah, no, I don't think I've done that. If I have, I don't remember.
Okay, you blocked it out too. And talk a little bit about the process then, because what I encourage people to see theater is they don't realize how much work goes into it. In terms of this show will run, for example, what, 3 weekends or 4?
It'll run 3 weekends.
3 weekends, and so it opens when?
Opens October 7th and will run through October 22nd. I believe there's 10 performances total.
Okay, but talk about the process, because people say they'll come to see a show, and that's cool. You put it together couple days, whatever. How long are you working on this?
I mean, if we start from the initial approach to direct this, since October last year, and then we got a rewrite from David, then we had auditions, we casted it, we had our first read through actually back in April. From April up till now, we've had occasional production meetings around once a month to talk about technical elements and other things regarding the play. And now that we're in, I've had met the last couple of weeks. I met with each of my actors individually over Zoom to discuss some things. And now we're officially in the actual rehearsal process, putting it all together now. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of prep work and just all that. I know for myself, in terms of when we're dealing with anything with historical figures, there's always a little bit of research you want to do. I kind of went down the rabbit hole on this for a little while, because when you're dealing with, the Frankenstein legacy of if you try to, there's so many adaptations of this story and so many versions of it. And then when you start looking at the romantic characters like Percy Shelley, Mary Shelley, Claire Clairmont, all the historical figures we have, there's so much information about them. And it's all, to be honest, really fascinating. So you kind of go down a rabbit hole a bit. But it helps, inform, choices we're making within the show. So
talk about the rehearsal process. What does that entail?
So, I mean, it's basically, we get to the theater. I have the schedule broken down for specific scenes for us to work on. And we work through the scenes. So what I like to do is have sort of actors just go through it a couple times in terms of just seeing what happens, just sort of play with it. And then we'll kind of sort of block some things, we'll set some things, and see what works. And we kind of sort of, by the end of that first, the end of the first bit of working rehearsal of whatever that scene is, we hopefully have a good layout of what it is. And then so when we get back to it and we revisit it, we can kind of start polishing it and making it run smoother. And if there are changes that need to be made, we can make those changes. But yeah.
And that process is how many weeks rehearsal? 2, 3, 6? How many?
For this show, we have 4 weeks.
Okay.
But we have our first 2 weeks are basically going through everything. Our third week will be kind of polishing everything. And then our fourth week is, the first 2 rehearsals are basically integrating all the tech elements, and then our dress rehearsals, and then we go. So, and the show has quite a bit of tech stuff in certain aspects of it. So that'll be interesting once we get some of that involved too, because it's gonna, I think, not necessarily change some things, but feel a little bit more complete.
And Evan, Doug was mentioning the fact of the research, and he went into the rabbit hole on this. How much research have you done on this? Did you watch every Frankenstein movie you could see? Did you read about it?
I have read Frankenstein multiple times in my life, and the more so closer to the process, I was reading through Percy Shelley's poetry and kind of familiarizing myself with that, because
very cool.
In David's writing of this, some of that is incorporated more so as dialogue than spoken informal verse. So just getting more familiar with his body of work and where where he's coming from for character purposes. But the story of Victor Frankenstein and this creature has always been pretty close to my heart. I got to play the creature in one of our homebrew productions in Boston, which was, that version was much closer to just planting it in modern day, but still the classic story of it's alive and what happens after that. But it was pretty closely linked to the novel in the creature's ability for language and eloquence, and kind of that juxtaposition of this is something horrible, but it's capable of the concept of beauty and is aware, right?
Did you ever do Young Frankenstein?
I've watched it many times.
No, but no, that's one show I was in, the musical.
Oh, cool.
Did you ever see the musical?
I haven't seen the musical.
Doug, have you ever seen it?
I've seen clips of it. I've never gotten to see it like
Oh,
live.
oh, it's so cool, and I loved it. Evan, that was one. So I had one line, so I could handle one line, and my one line was I fell off a gurney. I shouted, "Ouch!" So I could handle that. That was about it. But if you ever get a chance, guys, fun show, especially after you've done this. But Evan mentioned too the cool thing about the playwright is he is also, I don't know if you know this, or you probably do now, he's an accomplished poet too. So this seems like right up his alley. Have he, do you know the story of Doug or Evan, how he chose this to write about this?
I don't know what his initial ideas were, although I mean I'd love to have him come on this show to talk over that with you sometime. But I think he sort of was just envisioning kind of this idea of that initial inception when Frankenstein was written, and sort of took it off from there, because that's sort of where our historical characters come from. Because when Frankenstein was written, it was proposed as like a ghost story writing contest by Lord Byron when they were all together in the summer of 1816, and that's where our play almost starts. But that scene basically is in our play. And then I think he took that as sort of the starting point, and sort of just went with it.
Talk about who else is in the cast.
Yeah. So obviously we have Evan as Percy Shelley. Hannah Williams is playing Mary Shelley. We have Morgan Miller, who is playing Claire Claremont, who historically is Mary Shelley's stepsister. Daniel Moore is playing Lord Byron, the other famous romantic poet in here. Strother Stingley is playing John Polidori, who was another historical figure, was with them at the time. He was Byron's like doctor and friend who was staying with them during that summer. And then we have John Stockdale as Victor Frankenstein and Daniel Henry as the creature.
Okay, wow, great. I mean, my problem, Evan, is I can't be an objective critic, because if I know somebody, I'm going to like the show, So, like people, I don't know, like if you see it in my blog, but people complain about it because all I say is, how fantastic it is, how good it is, So the cast, I know everybody in it with the exception of Evan at this point in time, and so I'm going to like the show, It's just, but it's such a good cast though, and so I can just see them in each of the roles, and
Yeah,
love it.
I'm really happy with our cast. I think everybody is. Everyone's been great to work with so far, and I think everyone understands their role, and it's gonna be great.
Now, has the playwright been at any of the rehearsals, or did he meet with the cast at all?
David came to the read through, so he saw the read through, but we're going to have him come to a couple other rehearsals when we get a little further on, when we have more of a solid show to show him. But yeah, we will have him come to some of the later rehearsals so you can like kind of see the whole show a bit before it's officially open and we have all the elements included.
And what's exciting that what Magnetic does is this show, is this a first time it's ever been done anywhere?
Yes, this is a brand new play.
Okay. Because that's really exciting, Evan. You're newish into the area, but that's what Magnetic is kind of they're famous for. They do oftentimes cages, as an example. They do stuff that hasn't been done elsewhere. So that's pretty exciting, is it, to do a play for the first time?
Oh yeah, and they've just been great to work with overall. It's like from the get-go felt very welcoming, and every single person I've met in that space and through the programming has been very professional and seemingly very, very with it, which isn't across the board something you can count on, right?
The question I'll ask you, and by the way, who's your stage manager? Give a shout out to that person.
Oh, it's Dakota Mann, who was my
Okay,
stage manager for Nocturne, so it's great to work with him again.
and
So
he's
he's
the
always on
best,
top of it.
and he does all this. That's what he does. Evan, he's a good actor too, but he does stage managing. I'll ask you both, put you on the spot. I'll start with Evan. Why should people see this play?
Oh, I just think it's worth, if you have any inkling at all about the story of Frankenstein, it's worth looking at this as an exploration of it and a highlight. They shouldn't miss it. It's very cool. It's
Okay.
a very cool thought experiment, I would say.
That's kind of sounds like you got me excited about it. Same question, Doug. Anything to add to that? Why people should see this?
Yeah, Evan kind of hit it on the head. I mean, it's a very intelligent play. It's got quite a bit of humor in it here and there, and it kind of explores the Frankenstein story and kind of the legacy of what Frankenstein is today. Because the original novel itself was published in 1818. Mary Shelley revised it and published it in 1831. There's two versions of the novel itself that are published by the author. And then it's gone, from the 1931 movie to Young Frankenstein to, Scooby-Doo. I mean, the Frankenstein lore in terms of today is everywhere. So it's just, it just kind of explores that Frankenstein story
So
and what it means today.
So even if there's some people out there who don't know the story, they can pick it up pretty quickly by coming to the play. They'll get the idea.
Yeah, I don't think, I'd be hard pressed to find someone that doesn't know the Frankenstein story in some aspect because it's incorporated so much into our culture. I think you would know it even if you didn't know it was Frankenstein. You'd recognize the themes from it. Because that, it's depending on who you ask, Frankenstein for many people is considered the first modern science fiction novel because it actually deals with science, as opposed to just magic. And so, we owe, things like you can look at Blade Runner and trace it back to origins of Frankenstein. So, that's, I think, if you've, as long as you've not been hiding under a closet or hiding under a hill or a molehill or something forever, I think, I think you'll get it. That was a lot of rambling. You'll enjoy it. Come out, enjoy the show. You'll be fine.
Well, in
You'll have
general,
fun.
anything you see at Magnetic, you're going to enjoy, and anything by David Hopes, you're going to enjoy. And Evan, after this one, so right now you're in a show, you're going to do the Frankenstein show. Do you have anything on the books afterward?
Yeah, the only ones I know for sure is that I'll be performing in 3 of the one-act plays that are happening at Magnetic's One-Act Festival early November, pretty shortly after this run ends. So,
Now, is that tough also? We were talking before about doing a couple plays at the same time. How about doing one play, or you're going to be doing 3 plays, I guess, in that, your 3 one-act plays?
yep. Yeah,
So,
luckily none of them are more than 12 pages in length, though, so that's a fairly bite-sized piece to chew on.
okay. And so you've seen them already, or you know what you're going to be in?
Yep, yeah, I've been reading through them. We haven't had any official rehearsals for any of those quite yet, but we're getting schedules together right now for that.
And down the road, aside from the shows you're in, dream role, would that be Dracula? Would that be next, or other than Dracula? Do you have a dream role you'd like to play?
I have not yet had the privilege of being in a fully produced Shakespeare production.
Okay.
And so, as far as a dream role goes, I've always been very drawn to Mercutio, and if I were to pick one out of a hat and pulled that, I'd be pretty happy about it. I think I'd have a lot of fun in that space.
Well, I don't know if have you been to Montfort yet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a great area. So maybe next year we'll get you in some of the Montfort plays, but they certainly do a lot of Shakespeare there as well. And the same question. So either directing or acting, I'll ask you on both ends. If you could choose a dream role you'd like to act in, what would that be?
A dream role to act in.
Yeah.
Well, if I could still sing like I used to, Sweeney Todd, but
Okay.
I don't think I can carry. I don't think I can sing like that anymore. Um, but I'm drawn to Shakespeare a lot too. I don't know.
Well, how about if not acting, how about directing? You're going to tell me off there. You're going to be directing a play.
Directing, yeah, I mean, directing, I can tell you because I really want to direct Richard II, um, Shakespeare play. I also want to direct Romeo and Juliet, Evan, just saying. I have ideas for that. But Richard II is the big Shakespeare play I really want to direct. It's one of my favorites. And been talking to a couple people, including Dakota, a lot about it because we both really love that play.
And you have also, you're slated to direct another play, I think, coming up next year.
Yes, so I am will be directing Death of a Salesman at Heart next fall, I believe in October. So that'll be another darker play. So that's why I said I have to find some comedies to throw in there at some point. So, but yeah, I'm excited about that. That'll be coming up in about a year.
Yeah, great play. And let me just ask you to recap one last time. So folks want to see the current play. If you give the specifics on Frankenstein rubrics, when and where and all that good stuff.
Yeah, actually, I want to say real quick before
Please.
I forget a couple of things we are doing with this play to try and promote it. And we are having planning to have a raffle at some point. I have a nice copy of Frankenstein, like a nice edition of it. We're gonna have everybody sign it. We're gonna raffle it off. We'll hopefully have some other Frankenstein loot we can put in there. But we'll do the raffle the last night of performances. You don't have to be present to win because obviously you may not have come to the show then, but we're going to do a raffle. And then Grail Movie House in Asheville is partnering with Magnetic, and they're showing the 1931 Boris Karloff Frankenstein on October 1st and October 2nd at noon, and then October 3rd at 7 p.m. And a percentage of that proceeds will be going to Magnetic as well. So you should go check that out.
And exciting because Grail will be reopened by then. Grail, a great local movie theater. And I'm so excited they're now going to have 3 screens, which is going to be great. And let me ask you, Evan, then, do we also get a chance in this raffle that Evan as Shelley will write a poem, maybe, and they could give out the poem? Or...
I'd be happy to contribute. Yeah.
Okay. So
I'd be
think
happy
about
to
that.
contribute.
Well,
Yeah.
he's the poet. We'll see what kind of poet he is in terms of writing a poem. So back to the specifics then. Play runs when to when?
Yeah, so it's the Frankenstein Rubrics by David Hopes. It's at the Magnetic Theater. It runs October 7th through October 22nd. You can get tickets at magnetictheater.org, and that's theater RE, but magnetictheater.org.
Okay, and just I'll encourage people to see it because anything Magnetic does is going to be good. Anything Doug is involved in is going to be good. And I'm sure it's going to be with you, Evan. Look forward to seeing you in this play. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for joining me on this Blaine's World podcast. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And again, you can see us on wherever podcasts can be found. You can also find us on YouTube. And I look forward to seeing you in the show in just a couple of weeks, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us,
Thank you,
Blaine.
Blaine.